Welcome in, everybody. It's the Important Nonsense Wednesday show, week 2, September 14th, 2022. Happy birthday, Andrew. You thought I forgot. I did not. Neither of these two people know who Andrew is. That's my younger brother. Uh, Returning, as always, I'm Neil Smith. With me, Mike Manning. You know him. You love him. And making his first appearance on the Important Nonsense Wednesday show, Mike Burland. Mike, how you doing?
Good, good. Thanks for having me. How you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. Happy that week 1 is in the books.
Yeah.
Things hopefully are starting to we'll get into a rhythm now. We all know, we're all veterans. We all know how this goes. Everything is a nightmare. Getting to the season, but once the season starts, we'll eventually get into a groove and things will start to work themselves out. So crazy week 1, super eventful. A lot of reactions to that, which we're primarily going to discuss here today. But I'm just now realizing we've got Mike and Mike in the evening. Oh no, end the stream. I'm going to get sued. I got to shut it down. Shut it down.
Yeah.
Okay, we can't do that anymore. We'll have to rename the show.
Everybody gets one.
Everybody gets one, unless it's just don't play with the mouse. The mouse doesn't play. So, guys, have you been on Twitter recently? Been on Reddit? Been on the internet in general?
I haven't. I was gonna say can't do too much Reddit.
I've been trying to avoid it because I know the meltdown after week 1. So try to avoid it after that first week,
Smart. I took a nice big healthy slug of it and immediately wanted to bleach my eyeballs, but I need those to see. So we couldn't do that. So what we decided to do is we're going to talk about it here. We're going to do a little piece that I like to call overreaction theater. And AKA Patience or Panic, a game that Steve and I play. Steve, by the way, back next week. Steve's on assignment for one more week. He'll be back in his normal chair for week 3. We miss him dearly. And here's what we're going to do. For those longtime viewers of the Important Nonsense Wednesday show, they'll know what Patience or Panic is. But it's a very simple game. Week 1 is crazy. We go through this every year. We tell people you can't overreact to week 1. You can't, just like we tell people to start their studs in week 1, followed up by you cannot overreact to week 1. It's a small sample size. A million things are going to change very rapidly. It's a fool's errand to have these knee-jerk reactions to the first week because you might do something really, really dumb without thinking it through. And this year's no exception. So what we're going to do, we're going to play some Patience or Panic. We're going to go through a list of players, and we're going to go around the horn here and talk about, are we preaching patience or is it time to panic? I think based on my preamble that the savvy viewers will know that one list is going to be longer than the other. But let's go through it. And tell you what, let's start on Thursday, just like the NFL did. Just like the NFL wants to start on Thursday night. Let's start there. Let's go right into it with Allen Robinson. So, for those who maybe didn't see the game, Allen Robinson played 97% of the snaps, winds up with 2 targets, 1 reception for 12 yards. And the moral of the story on that game was the Rams probably should have played some players in the preseason because they looked completely out of sorts. By the way, Mike, I told you to avoid Matthew Stafford. I told you. What did I tell you last Wednesday?
I mean, it wouldn't have been like any of the people you said Dak over Matt. Well, that didn't work either.
No, we're not doing that. I'm taking my victory lap. And I'm cutting your mic. That's what we're doing.
I'm pretty sure that every player that we had mentioned to compare with one another were guys like Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, and Trey Lance were all compared.
Justin Fields.
So those were all compared to each other.
The only ones that we hit were Trevor Lawrence and Jameis Winston. Those were the ones that would have been better. But
I had the same Stafford versus Justin Fields, and I just couldn't bring myself to start Fields over Stafford, but it would have been the better move, but just couldn't do it, week 1. Yeah.
Low bar for the Stafford thing.
For sure.
We're not even going to play Patience or Panic on Matthew Stafford because there's no possible way he's going to put up a negative. And if he does, then it really is time to panic.
I was going to say.
Boy.
I mean, we've seen them do it before, like Derek Carr last year.
Yeah, it's true.
He had a negative game. Trust me,
true.
I know. He was in my lineup that week.
But let's talk about Allen Robinson because that was the byline. I mean, I'm assuming both of you saw the game or at least saw the highlights. What do we think? Instant or Mike, Mr. Burland, we'll go to you first.
Man, this one's tough. It's there's probably two sides of the story. If you were or had Allen Robinson on your team last year, you're probably having PTSD and you want to drop him now and then sit him on the bench. But I think patience is what I would go with Allen Robinson, but kind of a short leash, I guess. If he's going to do this again in week 2 and then week 3, maybe it's time to start, maybe not cutting him, but moving on, putting him on your bench, not force starting him. But like you said, the Rams didn't do anything in preseason. Allen Robinson's a new receiver on the team. Stafford was just honing in on Cooper Kupp the entire time. So, it was just like that was his comfort zone. That was his blanket to throw to, and he was just looking there the whole game. So I'd like to think, give it a couple weeks and you're going to start seeing potentially kind of like how Robert Woods went last year, where it started off really slowly and then, picked it up week 3 or 4, had a really good stretch before he got hurt, of course.
Mr. Manning, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can't sit there and be like, Mike, go first. But
that's why we're going to we're going to last names. And I also can't call you Mike and Mike because I did it again. Cut the stream.
Demonetized.
I mean,
we got monetized? When did that happen? Oh my God.
Would you be surprised if that was Matthew Stafford's worst game of the entire season?
No, I think it probably should be. I would hope it's his worst game of the entire season. I would hope so.
Okay, so that was his worst game. Let's just say that was his worst game the entire season. And because Allen Robinson had open plays. Like, he got open. He wasn't doing his stereotypical, like last year where he had the MO of he can't get open anymore for some reason, or his like hamstrings bothering him and he can't run. No, he can actually still get open. He's still a very good route runner. I get that he's not going to do what Cooper Kupp does. That's never been his game.
Mm-hmm.
And Matthew Stafford has never been somebody that's going to shy away from somebody that's in a contested catch situation. Trust me, in Detroit, he had that plenty. So I'm not that afraid of it because, okay, if Matthew Stafford threw another touchdown and even 100 more yards, which wouldn't be out of the ordinary, is probably about his standard average for the season. I'm sure Allen Robinson wouldn't have had a great game at that point, but he would have a fine game. He wouldn't have been like the sky is falling.
He wouldn't have had a 2, which is why we're even having the conversation.
Yeah. Like, I mean, Stafford was under pressure nonstop. I mean, that Rams offensive line just did not do anything right that game, whether it was the running game or the passing game. So I think that they'll get back into it. Let the Rams players all leads back into it. They had a long season and probably a very long off season when it came to not doing football things. So let's just calm down a bit for Allen Robinson.
That is where I am at as well. So all 3 of us are going to preach patience on Allen Robinson. I wouldn't blame you in week 2 if you had an equivalent level option that you wanted to sit him down for a week and let him prove it to you. And if you had. And I'm not talking about playing Julio Jones over Allen Robinson like the internet wants you to do. So I could do a whole show on the Julio Jones hype train by myself in my closet. It's just me screaming into a pillow, that for an hour until I pass out. That is it's too soon to want to cut bait on Allen Robinson. For the love of God, don't drop him.
No.
I don't know what that conversation is that I'm seeing on Twitter, but it needs to stop now. I don't know what it needs to be. It needs to have some of those like political, this tweet contains misinformation tags put on it. That's what all of those need.
Yeah.
Do not drop Allen Robinson.
A single digit round player that you drafted. And
it's
Robinson
a terrible
was like
decision.
If you want to do somebody that's in the double digits, like even around 10 or so, I still would highly suggest not doing it after just 1 week. But if you're looking at dropping one of your top 9 round players and Robinson being like a top 4 to 5 usually, that's insane.
5th, 6th rounder. Yeah, you can't. If you want to, like I said, if you're a deep team and you got options and you have something that you think is broadly equivalent and you want to sit him down for a week, by all means, by your leave. It's your team. Do what you got to do. I wouldn't blame you for wanting to do that. Let them figure it out. Let him prove it to you. But I'm not gonna. But cutting him or trading him, you're never going to get what you put in.
Yeah.
So it's best just to stay the course.
Maybe trade for him.
Trade for in another week or two would be a more
Yeah.
real conversation. Right now, it's still going to be. It's only one bad game, so no one's going to give you that hefty of a discount. But let's move on from Allen Robinson because I think we all agree on that one, and I wanted to do that as a baseline since this is the first time we've ever all sat down together. Let's see where people's crazy meter is. But let's talk about another. Let's stay at wide receiver. Let's talk about another one. Let's talk about Mr. Darnell Mooney. And Mike, I almost did it. Mr. Manning, was it you who added Darnell Mooney to the sheet? I'll defer to you, sir. Take it from the top.
I mean, if anybody saw the weather forecast that was going into that game and saw what play, I mean, Nick Bosa literally was walking out onto the field to warm up and turned around. That's how upset he was with how bad the game field looked like. Yeah. I mean, I saw in the videos where there was a San Francisco fan sitting in the stadium in the seats and just had a thing of popcorn right in front of him. And it was just a monsoon of like a waterfall falling into his bag of popcorn. And he just stood there accepting it like, this is my fate right now. This is how life is going. But that's what usually happens when you're losing to the Bears. That's how you feel. But nothing went well that game for any team. Elijah Mitchell got hurt. Trey Lance did nothing, basically. Fields, I think, was the only player that had if you started him because you felt like doing a flyer or you waited too long on quarterback, you were okay with. I think the touchdowns went to like Dante Pettis and
Dante Pettis had one. Yep.
St. Brown.
Yeah, Equinemius.
Not even the good St. Brown that we think of all the time.
No. The other St. Brown. Equinemius. Yeah.
Yeah. So Cole Kmet, I would be worried about Cole Kmet a little bit because there was too many tight ends that saw the field in general. Could be because of the field or because of how the weather was going. But Darnell Mooney, he's going to be fine. Fields looked good. That's a good sign. Fields actually looked like a good player, a good quarterback this season. Maybe he improved a bit. The only thing I would say is that we don't know yet about the scheme that's going to be, like how the run-pass rate's going to go. Otherwise, I'm not worried about Mooney. He's going to be a target hog. Just because Equinemius St. Brown and Dante Pettis got open for wide open touchdowns, basically, in a monsoon instead of Mooney doesn't mean anything to me. If you want to trade for Mooney, I suggest you do because I have high hopes for him before the season, and it's continuing.
I'm with you on that. Mr. Burland, what do you think? Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, it's kind of, I'm, in the same opinion, I would say, just kind of throw everything from that game out the window almost. And like you said, the monsoon, it's like, what can you expect? And no one did well. And Mooney's he's on a team. Who else? What the other wide receivers on that team, Dante Pettis and Byron Pringle and St. Brown. It's like, do you really see these guys taking anything away from Mooney? And I don't. And I think just like Mike said, he's going to be a target hog. He's going to be a stud in PPR leagues. And it's just throw it out the window, see what happens, over the next couple of weeks and the usage. And then you can start worrying if we have the same performance after 2 or 3 weeks. But after this game, I have no worries whatsoever. And just to touch on the Cole Kmet thing, it is maybe slightly worrisome with the usage of the tight ends. And did he have 0 targets or just 0 catches?
That's a good question. Cole Kmet doesn't even make the list. This is just an organic conversation that we're now having.
Yeah.
Well, because
I know you put up a 0. I don't even know if he had a target.
There's less than 10 completions in general. So, I think it was 16 or 17 attempts for Fields.
Cole Kmet, 1 target.
1 target, 0 catches.
But it's a tight end, and it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to replace it with someone better? If there's someone better on the waivers, maybe, but I think Cole Kmet's going to be fine. Yeah, it's the tight end position.
Yeah.
If you play in an 8-team league, maybe, or a 10-team league, possibly. But so I'm not worried about it. And, I'm not a huge fan of the Bears and their offense necessarily, but it's just one of those things that someone has to put up points, right? Someone has to catch the ball. Fields is going to throw for some yards, and someone has to be on the receiving end. So.
Okay, I'm with you on most of that. Mike Manning knows this. Mike Burland doesn't. Steve and I are both lifelong Bears fans. I'm from Chicago, so we both are. I can tell you that I saw the weather forecast, and I actually called a friend of mine who lives there to ask what the weather was like, and he's like,
Not good.
he's got dogs, and he's like, my dogs can't even go pee. And I'm like, yeah, I bet it's okay. So I was actually fiddling with the idea of playing Brandon Ayuk in one of my own personal leagues, and I woke up and saw that, and I was like, never mind, just put Brandon Ayuk back on the bench
Yeah.
because and I'm like, you can just throw out anything that happens in this game.
Yeah.
None of it matters. They got so far out of game plans for either team immediately because of the complete weather condition failure that was, that I take away nothing from that game. As far as I'm concerned, the game might as well not even happen. Glad that the Bears won, because at least that means they won't go 0-16 or 0-17 now, which is great. Hey, hooray! But I'm not worried about Darnell Mooney, not long term. Not worried about any of the ones you'd really be worried about. And we will talk about one player that maybe there's some eyebrows raised for a little bit later on the Bears. But in reality, it's very hard to take away too much of anything in that game for me. Also, people keep asking what's wrong with that field. Well, okay, that field's been there for over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
You can't touch anything there because it was granted historical landmark status in 2006. You're not allowed to make improvements. That's it. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that they bought the Arlington Heights racetrack property when it came up for sale and are going to move that team to Arlington Heights? That's why. They need a new place to play. So they're going to move out to the suburbs. And I don't know what they're going to do with that property when it's no longer playing Bears football games. I assume it'll be some sort of concert venue. See, my idea is we're going to develop it into high-end condos, but not the way you think. They're going to be super fan condos where you live in like a section. And they don't even rip out the chairs or anything. That's where Mike Ditka peed once. $5,000 a month rent.
Yeah, right.
That's my plan. That's what we're doing if I'm running that show. But I digress. You can't take away anything from that game if you're me. I don't think. And then also, be prepared for them to have terrible home field conditions all year. That's going to happen. There's not going to be too many more seasons. This might be the last one at Soldier Field. They can't keep the field up anymore, and they can't make any more capital improvements to the stadium itself. So they're kind of stuck. They have to go. So it's not a really fun conversation, but it is a necessary conversation, I feel, to provide context. Because all I've seen all week on Twitter is, what's wrong with the stadium? And I'm like, spoken by people who don't know anything about the situation. Like it's a whole saga with that place. So the folks that follow it, none of us were surprised that once it started really raining like that it washed the whole field out. It's starting to look a lot like the old Link in Philly, where it's just rocks. Like it's just there's not a lot you can do. So, okay. So we're all going to preach some patience on Darnell Mooney. Hopefully you managed to recover a win if you were playing Darnell Mooney, because let's be honest, you probably were. And better days are ahead. It's way too early to start freaking out about that.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Monday night debacle. Let's go to the Monday night horrible game where I currently live in Denver. Watched every snap of that game and basically was screaming at Nathaniel Hackett the entire time about what are you even doing?
Yeah.
Broncos didn't look prepared for that game in any way, shape, or form. They came in arrogant, unprepared. I digress. But what it's generated is a lot of people freaking out in the background about Cortland Sutton. So who added Cortland Sutton to the list? I didn't see who it was that actually had him. Mr. Manning, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, this is like a repeat of last year is what people are thinking. Like, oh, we sat there and everybody's going to pick one of the two wide receivers that's going to have a new quarterback that is going to revamp the entire offense. Hope you picked the right one. Everybody was on Cortland Sutton, and now Jerry Jeudy comes out and has a big game, which basically came from one catch where he broke a tackle.
76-yard touchdown on a when he broke a tackle and ran it the rest of the way home.
Yeah, he had a contested catch situation where I believe a rookie, Kobe Bryant, I think, was in coverage on with him, his back was turned to the ball, and he put his hands up and stuff, and they just had a hand fight, and then Jerry Jeudy came down with it and ran the rest of the way without anybody in front of him. So you're going to have those games. Judy's a phenomenal football player in general. Like, he's a very talented first-round wide receiver out of Alabama. No doubts about his talent. He could do better at catching it with, in terms of drops. But still, he's going to have his games, just like Robert Woods last year had his games. I still think that, even with everything that went wrong, Sutton was targeted just as many times as Judy. The problem was there was a lot more targets to the running back than certainly anybody else anticipated. And the beginning of the game was basically just tight ends. Don't know what, and it was like Andrew Beck and
just like everybody had it. Everybody had that.
Yeah.
It was Andrew Beck and some other tight end that I can't even. There was a tight end they targeted right off the bat. I don't even remember. I think it was Tomlinson, and he immediately dropped the ball on an easy open pass.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is he the one that he's a blocking tight end? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
So I think it was just a weird game script of Hackett's first game, overthinking it, obviously with the field goal situation too. But everything about Sutton and Wilson throughout their careers screams they're a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
Wilson has been the best deep ball thrower since he entered the league, and Sutton has been top 5 in target rate for deep passes, like percentage of his targets being deep balls. Well, now he actually is a quarterback that's accurate down the field. It was a fluky game, obviously. There was 3 fumbles at the goal line.
Yeah.
This is just calm down. Sutton's going to have his games. Nobody targets wide receivers like Russell Wilson does, except for like Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, which is reasonable for them to do. And Sutton is just such a physical athlete.
As an aside, my favorite part of that whole game was watching the Javonte Williams truthers just lose their mind, just screaming, just full rage mode. And I'm like, if only someone was trying to tell you, but I digress. I digress from all of that.
I mean, I think it was better. For Javonte, it was a better outcome in general, other than the fumble. Like the usage was better than I expected it to be.
Yeah, he played pretty well apart from the fumble.
Yeah.
Like.
So I'm just saying that
encouraging.
Don't sit there with week 1 seeing the box score of Judy having like 70 more receiving yards or something and a touchdown and being like, well, Judy's obviously going to be his guy. Hope you guys got him at a discount in your drafts. Count me out of that.
Yeah.
Mr. Burland, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're 3 for 3 in agreement here, and it was just a weird. Like you guys said, it was just kind of a weird game. Russ kind of turned into like just dumping the ball off. What did Javonte have? Like 11 catches or something crazy like that. And just dumping the ball off. And that doesn't really play into Cortland Sutton's strengths. So I do think we're going to see a completely different game plan next week. And, and the Judy thing, I think no one should be surprised that Judy had a better game. Like, they were pretty close, I think, in ADP. I know Sutton was kind of getting a little more attention over the offseason and the preseason.
Towards the end, Sutton started to separate a little bit. Sutton started climbing up the top 15 territory.
Yeah.
And Judy is more mid to late 20s. Is kind of where it all final ADP before draft weekend. That's about what it was.
Yeah. So, Sutton did pull away, but I just think you're going to have these games like Mike said, that Judy's a first round wide receiver from Alabama. He's good. He's going to have good games. They're both going to have good games. They're going to maybe trade off, and they're both going to have a game where they both go off in the same game. So it shouldn't be a surprise. Russell Wilson can support 2 receivers. We saw it in Seattle. So it was just a very strange game. I don't know if the game plan was to kind of turn Russell Wilson into a little bit of just dumping the ball off, and or if that was just kind of going back to Seattle and that crowd got to him or something. Who knows? But I'm definitely not. You're not going to cut Sutton. You're not going to trade him. You're going to hold on to him. You're going to start him next week, and he's a good chance he's going to go off for you and win your week. So
this is one that I don't understand why people are so upset.
No.
If he would have gone out and had a game like last year where he would have had 7 targets and went 1 for 6 or like 1 reception for 6 yards, okay, then I understand. then I'd be freaking out. But the reality of it is he had 7 targets. He had 4 receptions for 72 yards. At they didn't target a wide receiver until the Jerry Jeudy touchdown at the end of the second quarter. I'll bet you whatever you want that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
They're not going to come out and spend the whole first half throwing dump offs to the tight ends over and over and over again. I think a lot of things were wrong with that game. I think Nathaniel Hackett went full deer in the headlights. I think he kind of freaked out at various points. He did not call a clean game. He made some bad mistakes. And frankly, I don't think he had that team ready to play.
No.
There, I said it. I think the defense was slop. I think the defense was completely just not prepared. And they were just playing just undisciplined. Just didn't know their assignments. Penalty after penalty after penalty after penalty. I get it. It's an emotional game. You've got to be more in control than what you were. I think the whole thing got away from them, and I think some very questionable decisions got made in the first half and at the end of the game especially. So they've got a lot of work to do. They're going to tighten it up. But as it relates to Cortland Sutton, I don't care. You still got 4 for 72. What are you complaining about?
End zone targets.
Yeah. What are you complaining about? Again, if he was 7 targets, 1 reception for 6 yards, I agree. Start making arrangements. 4 for 72 on 7 targets with several end zone shots in a game that was that weird and bad. Relax. Everybody needs to just calm down. And yeah, Jerry Jeudy's not going to catch a busted coverage 72-yard touchdown every week. It's not going to happen. And they're not going to target the tight ends that way. They're going to clean some of this up, or they're going to lose a lot of games and Nathaniel Hackett will be fired and none of this matters. But they're gonna make some adjustments. They're gonna tweak it. I'm expecting to see a much more polished product from them this coming weekend, especially because they're playing Houston.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they're gonna exercise some demons, I think, is what's about to happen on there. So look for the wide receivers to get a healthy target dose this week, and then everything will be fine. Everyone will relax, and it's fine. Now, they should have been able to do that against Seattle, but it's weird that you could have a week 1 trap game.
Yeah.
But I literally think that's what it was. I think they just thought, oh, they'll just roll over for us. Look at how bad their roster is. Whereas the Seahawks were treating that like the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, that was the Super Bowl.
That was as hard as they're probably going to play all year. Was that game, and they left everything on that field. So whereas I was just watching the Broncos, like, you just don't look like you want it. And you look like you're confused about what your assignment is, which is a recipe for disaster and chaos. So I'm not worried about Sutton. He'll be fine. I'm also not worried about Jeudy. But also I wouldn't be counting on Jeudy to score a touchdown every week the way that you got kind of bailed out a little bit there. So it'll be fine. There's no reason to overreact to it. And what I was more concerned about was when Cortland Sutton got blasted near the sideline and took a second to stand back up. That's when I was like, no. Like that.
You would be nervous about that. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm nervous about that. I don't like that. Don't do that. Like that's but I was not nervous about, and especially at the end of the half when you saw on the broadcast Russell Wilson walked over to Cortland Sutton and they were having a conversation, and I guarantee you this was a conversation. Hey, in the second half, I'm about to go to you like 8 times, and then that's what they did. He came out and he just started force feeding him the football, and I'm like, makes sense to me. So really not worried about that. And I think we're all in agreement. So far it's been a lot of agreeing with each other. Let's try and find one that we might be able to spice this up a little bit. Let's talk about a rookie. Let's talk about a rookie that was a very highly touted rookie that's played 1 game, and I'm seeing a lot of weird commentary. It's been a weird offseason too for Mr. Treylon Burks. From pre-draft coverage all the way up till now, it's been quite the saga where highly touted rookie prospect. We don't need to go all the way back through that. I was on record as saying I thought he should be the number 1 wide receiver off the board. I know, Mike, you had him, I believe, in your top 3, unless I'm not remembering that correctly.
I was a Garrett Wilson fan.
Yeah, I know that, but I know you had Burks also very highly rated. But then it's all the other stuff.
Him and London were pretty close to each other.
Yeah, but it's consensus even. He's near the top. And it's all the weird stuff. It's the conditioning issues. It's the asthma that suddenly people are worried about.
Yeah.
Bro, they knew he had asthma. You can't, there's no way. That argument doesn't make any sense. To the point where his ADP towards the end started falling pretty far, especially considering they had him out there in the preseason. People didn't like that. And it just looked like he wasn't as polished or developed as what a lot of folks were hoping he would be. I think a lot of folks had it in their head that he was going to walk in day one and just be third year AJ Brown. And it's like, no, AJ Brown took 3 years to be 3-year AJ Brown, who we got to see last Sunday. Nobody's worried about that. So it's like, for me, I'm seeing a lot of weirdness around Treylon Burks where people are just saying they're out on it, they're done, they regret everything, and they want to move him on. But help me here. 5 targets, 3 receptions for 55 yards on a day when the Titans couldn't move the ball through the air to save their life.
Yeah. And that was on 14 routes, I think.
Yeah, 14 routes.
Yeah, his rate was great.
Yeah. Yeah, it was amazing.
Why are people upset? Can someone help me?
Everything you said about the asthma and, is he out of shape or, he's playing in the third quarter or fourth quarter of the preseason. It's like, well, maybe they want to see him play more than a quarter or a drive or a series. And maybe he needs that. He is a rookie. So I think it's just all of that stuff piling on top of each other. And then, you get the 3 catches for 55 yards and people are disappointed. And he was a later round pick. So I think people are a little more comfortable with, cutting bait with him. But for me, I actually, in the trade article that I wrote, he was one of my buy lows. You might not even have to buy him. Maybe people are cutting him.
That's part of the conversation. There's a lot of people that are noodling with the idea of cutting him. And right now on Sleeper, he's only rostered in 80% of leagues. He's way too high to make the waiver wire column.
Yeah.
But he was a blue chip prospect. Yeah. Only rostered in 80% of leagues, and they're talking about coming off an 8.5 point game that he's in danger of being cut or traded in your fantasy league. No, Mike, help me. And by the way, check out Mike's column, obviously, the trade report. Mike, what did we decide on? What was the name you decided on?
Tricks of the Trade.
That's it. That's right. I knew you went with something better than I ever came up with when I was writing that column. And I appreciate. I'm happy to pass the mantle of writing the trade content to you, sir, because I know you'll take it seriously and do a fabulous job. So check that out. It's totally worth. It's definitely worth the read. So where were you with Treylon Burks? It sounded like you're recommending him as an acquisition, effectively.
Yeah, I would get him on your team sooner rather than later because I do think he's gonna just hit a point in the season where he's just gonna take off. It might take a few weeks, a lot of times for rookies it does. But if you just look at the Titans roster, it's like who does he have to beat out? Robert Woods, who looked terrible, in that game, and Westbrook and Kenine. Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't look like he's completely back. And Nick Westbrook, Kenine, if I'm saying that right, is starting over Akeen.
Yeah. Akeen, that might be it. Yeah.
Akeen.
We'll do all 3. We'll cover our bases. Sorry, Nick.
He's starting over Treylon Burks, and I just expect that to change. I think it's a really good chance that he's the best receiver on the team, and kind of like how AJ Brown came on is the second half of his rookie year. The Titans kind of do this. AJ Brown was kind of not starting the first 6-8 weeks of that season, and then he goes on a 6-week tear where he puts up, I think, over 600 yards and stuff, so, and that was there the whole time, and it was kind of the same situation where the receivers in front of him, it was kind of, not the best receivers. There competition that AJ Brown should have and did beat out, and as well as Treylon Burks, I think he's just Titans kind of, they lost that first game. They're going to need to put their best players out there. And I think that's Treylon Burks. And he had, efficiency wise, he had a fantastic game. What was it? 35% or something of targets on routes run. So if you get that, which you're not, but if you get those kind of numbers, you're talking about, high level elite status. So if you can get him on your team, if someone cut him, if he's on your waivers, grab him. If you can trade for him, I probably wouldn't take too much to trade. I think I mentioned in the article, I would trade someone like a receiver that kind of had a pretty good week, like a DJ Shark and maybe a couple other guys where you can kind of sell like, hey, look, this guy put up a decent week and, I'll trade him for you for Treylon Burks. If you can get that, I'd be all over that. So, I'm definitely buying low on Burks if I can.
Okay. And then Mr. Manning, what do you think about Treylon Burks?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that he led the team in air yards share.
I believe
which
so.
is-
He was averaging 18 and a half yards per reception. I don't know the exact air
you're
yard
gonna-
number, but that's pretty good. That's
So,
pretty
yeah,
good. Like
you ran like 14 routes or something, as we've been saying, and you led the team in terms of air yards. Like, that's pretty insane.
Yeah.
And even after most of, like, there was a couple of his catches that he was wide open, just got the ball and just started to bulldoze down the field, which is what he does.
it's his job.
Just get the ball in his hands, and he's gonna make people not want to tackle him, just like Derrick Henry. But
That's true. It is just like Derrick Henry, just a receiver form.
yeah, so it's as Michael said, that AJ Brown took a while to get going in this Titans offense as well. It's not a crazy thing for a rookie wide receiver to not just hit the ground running and be an immediate impact player on a generally not good offense. Overall, this is not one of the most talented offenses in the NFL.
It is not. It is not.
No matter
I
what
will tell
position
you
pick.
Well, I will. That's true. I will tell you this. There's one argument that I will accept, but I don't think it totally negates the premise. And that argument functionally is Kyle Phillips. I think that's why people are, I think, if we really unpeel the onion, I think that's why people are upset. Is because you have also rookie Kyle Phillips, 6 receptions for 66 yards. And I think that's why people are kind of concerned about, Treylon Burks couldn't even outperform fellow rookie Kyle Phillips. Maybe Phillips is the one that I want.
Phillips is Hunter Renfrow.
Thank you. That's where I was going here. Is that
I mean, not to do like the stereotypical thing, but like,
but he is Hunter Renfrow. That's his route tree.
Yeah, you're going to generally sit there and see a
Jamison Crowder. That's a good one too.
Yeah,
that's the route tree.
4 to 6 catches for 40 to 60 yards, and you're hoping you'd get a touchdown out of that as well. But that's generally going to be Kyle. You're not going to have a 100-yard game out of Kyle Phillips.
No, you want to know what Kyle Phillips does? All Kyle Phillips does to me is murder Austin Hooper.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it just murders Austin Hooper off the planet. So it's like, okay, Austin Hooper is garbage. Kyle Phillips, wave of the future. Cool. Like,
And
I can live with that.
Darnay Holmes was one of the worst slot cornerbacks last year.
Also fair. Oh, and Mike, you may not know. I know you're new to the site. Mike Manning writes our cornerback wide receiver shadow report. So whenever he starts talking about that, I just get out of the way. I just get out of the way and let him do it.
Speak.
Yeah. So he would know. He's our authority on who was bad at corner this year and last year. So I'm actually kind of bullish on the whole Kyle Phillips thing because you can acquire him for nothing. And it's like, hey, if he's just going to take all the Austin Hooper work, okay, then you can just cut Austin Hooper, not like it mattered, and just pick up Kyle Phillips. So fun little nugget there. But to me, that has nothing to do with the Treylon Burks job.
No.
It's a totally separate job. Okay.
I think that the fact that Kyle Phillips, out of anybody, led the team in receiving, and Robert Woods looked terrible, and Akeem Westbrook didn't do really anything, bodes well for Burks.
Yeah. It bodes very badly for the Robert Woods shares you have in the Akeem, and no one's rostering that anyway. So it's like you're just talking about Robert Woods. And if you were expecting a huge number out of Robert Woods in week 1, I have a bridge in New York that I'd like to sell you and get in my DMs about that because he's not healthy.
No.
He can play, but he's clearly not the Robert Woods I've watched for years. His burst just isn't there. And also, you'd like to see him get more involved in the running game, but they weren't doing that. They were throwing it to Dontrell. That whole game was so weirdly sideways that the only real takeaways I had from it were, if you're panicking about Treylon Burks, I think you're doing it wrong. And Kyle Phillips on the waiver wire for $1. That was the takeaways that I had from the Titans. And we'll talk about the Giants in a minute because the Giants had their own interesting takeaways. But okay, let's move away from wide receiver. We've done a lot of wide receivers. Let's do a quarterback real quick. Let's talk about quarterback. We referenced that Chicago monsoon that everyone was playing in, and I've seen a lot of panicking around Trey Lance. Just a lot of clutching of pearls. and a lot of, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Like, and again, I'm going to make it really simple and I'll state my feelings flatly and then I'll move on and we'll go around the horn. But I don't take anything away from that game. How are you expecting him to succeed with no Kittle on the road in a hurricane?
Mm-hmm.
It's not his first ever NFL start, but it might as well be. Like, he's still very raw. He didn't have, like, nothing was going to prepare him for being able to do anything in that game. Oh, and then they lost their starting running back pretty early in the game as well. So that goes out the window. I'm really not worried about it. I've seen a lot of panicking. I've seen a lot of people talking about benching Trey Lance. I've seen a lot of people talking about lowering him in their rankings, looking at other alternatives. And hey, it always pays to be proactive. But if someone is trying to panic sell Trey Lance in your league, I got $1.
Yeah.
I got Derek Carr. Here you go. Take him. Go nuts. So for me, it's way too early to panic about Trey Lance, and I discount that entire game. If Trey Lance puts up 3 performances in a row like that, we'll talk. But let's go the other way that we've known. Mike Burland, go ahead. What do you think, Trey Lance?
Yeah. Again, we talked about that game, kind of throw it out the window. And he still had 13 carries and over 50 yards rushing. And if you're going to get that every week from him, and you're not going to get the passing numbers that you got, that those almost have to improve, I'm not worried about it at all. And I don't have any, unfortunately, I have no Trey Lance shares, but I was always under the impression if I were going to take Trey Lance, I was going to maybe back him up with another quarterback just to play it safe, especially in deeper leagues. So if you have someone maybe that you want to start this week that, if you have a Kirk Cousins or, a Derek Carr that you want to start, that's fine. You kind of want to play the wait and see with Trey Lance. I wouldn't. I would start him.
For the record, they're playing Seattle.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
For the
record.
record.
They just had their Super Bowl. So Super Bowl hangover for Seattle, right? So, yeah, it's just I'm not worried about it. And that game was crazy. I can't imagine. You said it wasn't technically his first start, but it might as well have been, the starting quarterback. You're going to be the starting quarterback this season, and you have to play in those kind of conditions. It's just I can't imagine, what was going through his head, and no Kittle, and so yeah, I'm definitely starting him this week. And like you said, if he has 2-3 more performances like this, then you can think about it. But if you're going to get that rushing floor of 50 yards, he doesn't have to do that much more to be fantasy relevant in the passing game. So, yeah, I'm totally with you on there.
Mike Manning.
Yeah, I mean, we're rinsing, repeating at this point when it comes to the Chicago Bears 49ers game. The only thing I'll add is I think the injury to Elijah Mitchell actually helps him out more because
long term or at least temporarily,
right? Because I think that they will look to use more of a design run game for the quarterback position than even they did in week 1 because of the fact that I don't think Jeff Wilson can actually handle a massive workload, like a 20-plus carry type thing. He didn't last year whenever he took over for Elijah Mitchell. He didn't, and it took all the way back till when C.J. Beathard or Nick Mullins, I think it was Beathard that was the starting quarterback, and everybody else was hurt, and Jeff Wilson was the starting running back. Because that's what the 49ers do, is it was supposed to be like Jerick McKinnon, it became Jeff Wilson. That's so right. I think that they're going to just Deebo Samuel got a bunch more carries. They're going to look at the run game and have it, but Trey Lance is going to be fine. This was, again, with the Matthew Stafford thing of like, would you be surprised if this was his worst game? Nope. And he still was, double digits?
Yeah. Not great. Not what you wanted, but...
No, but I mean, if you actually streamed a quarterback and he got double digits for you, you wouldn't really be, upset. You'd be like, whatever, I didn't pick the right one, but at least it's, he had 12 or something.
Yeah, he didn't come out and have a Matthew Stafford or Joe Burrow, 5 turnover game that you'd be like, whoa, what happened here? Okay. Well, I tell you what, let's mix it up a little bit. So, Mike, I know you have. We'll stay in that Chicago game because I want to be done with it, frankly, and this is the last topic from it. So, Mike, you added one. You wanted to talk about David Montgomery. So the floor is yours, sir. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, I love David Montgomery because he's helped me win back-to-back championships in one of my leagues. So I'm a big Montgomery fan, but I was, excuse me, I was a little concerned with Khalil Herbert. Just looks better in that system. He finds the hole and he kind of goes for it, whereas Montgomery tends to dance around a little bit more, and it just doesn't work in that system as well. And you see the two play, and it's just, man, Khalil Herbert just looks like the better running back right now. And with Montgomery, what's made him so valuable is he just gets the volume. He gets everything. He gets all the carries. He gets all the catches. He's not putting up huge numbers, but he's just getting so many touches that you have to start him. He's fantasy relevant in that sense. So if there's any type of split, at a 30%, 40% split with Herbert, it's just Montgomery's value is going to go way down unless he starts to become a little bit more efficient of a runner. But we'll see. That could happen. And the new coaching staff, they're not married to Montgomery. Montgomery's not their guy. They didn't draft him, so they could easily say, we think Herbert's a better runner and fits our system. We're not, we have no obligation kind of to David Montgomery. So I am worried. I'm not going to cut him. I'm not going to trade him low or anything. I'm going to hold on to him, probably start him for the next couple of weeks, but definitely something to keep an eye on. And if you kind of start seeing Khalil Herbert getting more snaps, getting more carries, you got to, because Montgomery is supposed to be he's probably RB2 for most people, I would say, and maybe your RB1. So he's kind of a big part of your team. You expected him and drafted him to contribute. So just something to keep an eye on. I'm not, fully panicking, but definitely something to keep an eye on there.
Oh, you listed him as a panic.
Yeah. A half panic. I'm halfway there.
We've talked about this a lot. This will be the last year that David Montgomery is in Chicago. He will have a new team and a new job at the end of this. The leadership and ownership group has already made it very clear that David Montgomery is not going to be there long term, and that they don't value him that way. And this is it. This is kind of his last ride out because it's the last year of his deal. I'll be shocked if he gets an extension in Chicago. It's almost 100% lock that he will be gone at the end of the year. So they are going, and we talked about this. Our big takeaway during the preseason Chicago Bears show was, if you're going to roster Montgomery this year, you really want to think about handcuffing Herbert to him because you just don't know how this is going to go throughout the course of the season. So to me, it's why I don't view it as a panic, because we've been saying that. It was the least surprising thing in the world to me when I saw Herbert getting some significant run, because they've been pretty open about the fact that this is what they want to do. So, but if you didn't know that, because maybe you didn't see our offseason show, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, patreon.important.com/importantnonsense.com. Sign up, get those shows nice and early. And that's kind of where it is. Mike, do you have anything to add for David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert split? Are you worried about it, or is this kind of like just par for the course?
I'd be very worried about it. I mean, I don't think that he had a bad enough game where you can't. I'd looked at, if you could trade him, I would trade him.
I agree with that. I don't want the headache.
Yeah, after week 1, I would be happy to trade him if I got a relatively close value for what you'd given up. So if you have the luxury when it comes to depth at the running back position, and you can swap them for like a wide receiver 2 or something along those lines, honestly, I'm not against it, because I'd probably say he has one of the highest chances of being overtaken by his backup in the league this year. I mean,
agree with that.
I'd say 20%, 25% chance that by the end of this season, Khalil Herbert is actually
I'd be willing to go even a little higher than 25, to be honest with you. I was thinking more like 33.
See, but how crazy is that when in terms of like a backup running back that is very much the backup entering the season? Yeah, you're not thinking of that with many other situations in the NFL.
No,
pretty much Tony Pollard.
And honestly,
About
Zeke
that.
looked really good, so I would be much more surprised if Pollard was starting over Zeke by the end of the season than if Khalil Herbert overtook David Montgomery. I honestly don't think I can think of another situation of a established starting running back for an NFL offense other than Chicago where the backup overtook the starter.
Okay, well, we did it, guys. We finally did it. A, we had a split decision, and second of all, we had a real panic. So we did it.
Yeah.
It's weird that you have a panic in week 1, but I'll just say this. In that crazy game, Herbert did play 30% of the snaps. He had 9 attempts, turned it into 45 yards and a score. It's 5 yards it's 5 yards a carry. That's really good.
Yeah.
I
believe he was in at the goal line.
He was, and he only had the one reception for -2 yards. We don't really care about that. The big thing is Khalil Herbert is still available in over 50% of leagues. So he's actually a waiver claim. He should be rostered at a much higher percentage. If I have David Montgomery and I don't want to trade him, which I would understand because running back is hard to trade, I would go and try and claim Khalil Herbert. And by the way, I would spend a good amount of fab dollars to do it. This isn't one of those like I'll throw in $10. I'll throw in my weekly average. No, this is like I'm going to throw in like $30 if I had $200 to spend. I'm going to put $30 on it. And I'm going to make sure I get Khalil Herbert. But we've been saying this since the preseason. If you're going to roster Montgomery, you need to have Herbert. And if you, I'm sorry if you didn't get the memo, but that's why I'm saying it. For me, it's not a panic because this is exactly what I expected.
Yeah,
I expected Montgomery to maybe put up a little more of a fight, but every sign in the world points to Montgomery is just going to slowly start kind of getting worked out of here, and they're going to see what they're going to want. And also, by the way, don't let that game fool you. The Bears are really bad. I say this as a lifelong Bears fan. They're not going to win a lot of games. So as we get closer to the end of the year, you're just going to see less and less Montgomery. Because they're going to want to see what they have in Herbert. So there might be some games where Montgomery actually gets more work, but good luck predicting that, because they're going to want to sit Herbert down to keep him healthy for next season when it actually does matter. So again, this is why I avoided this whole mess so much for my own personal teams. But I tell you what, let's do a few more, and let's do some of the ones that are kind of like quick hitters. Dawson Knox. I added Dawson Knox. Here's what I'll say about Dawson Knox. If you were counting on Dawson Knox to do anything, you are not paying attention.
Yeah.
Pay attention. But here's the thing. I looked all this up. Dawson Knox is rostered in over 80% of leagues. He was started in about 75% of the leagues that he was rostered in. So people clearly believe in Dawson Knox. I have no idea why. There's no way in the world you were going to convince me to count on this when they've got all those weapons, including playing both Jamison Crowder and Isaiah McKenzie, who both got targets. Knox is an afterthought. He doesn't matter. He doesn't matter at all. And he is not something that I would even want to roster. If I could get rid of Dawson Knox off my team, I would do so immediately. Yeah. If I could cut Dawson Knox for Logan Thomas, I would. That's how little I think of Dawson Knox.
Gerald Everett, another guy.
I don't know if I would do it for Gerald Everett. That was kind of like the biggest fluke I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's another good one. That's another good one because people are all on. I've seen some weird stuff, man. This is why we do this PSA about don't overreact to week 1. Our own Jordan McDonald, at McDonald Jordan, who writes our waiver column and is on the Thursday night show helping you set your lineups. He was telling us in our staff chat that in one of his leagues, somebody cut TJ Hawkinson for Gerald Everett.
That's crazy.
Get out of here. Get out of here. I'm going to bed. Like, I saw that and I'm like, can I play in that league? I was like, you got a spot? Because I'm happy to join up there, man. That sounds great. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where it's like Gerald Everett is like a fluke. There's no way that I'm going to count on that repeating. And so I don't know if I would do it for that, but there's definitely a handful of guys where it's like, yo, you can't count on Dawson Knox at all. And I get it. Tight end is a tragedy. It's a dumpster fire. It's all the bad superlatives, but particularly within that, I don't want Dawson Knox. So is anybody going to talk me off of panicking as officially labeling Dawson Knox a panic? Because I'd be ready to cut him.
I don't have him, so I'm not panicking, but yeah,
I wouldn't leagues either, but look at how many he is rostered in.
Yeah. No, I know. Well, one thing I I kind of compared the Bills this year to kind of the Chiefs over the last couple of years, where you're adding up like Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox, Isaiah McKenzie, Jamison Crowder. It's like, how many yards is this team going to put up each week? It's like all these guys can't be tops in their position every week or for the season, So I think with McKenzie and Crowder, it's going to take away from Knox. Maybe he'll catch the touchdown, which he kind of already was, the touchdown or bust, tight end. So yeah, I'm not panicking because I don't have him, but I would definitely be looking to move on.
That's not the game, Mike. I know you don't. I don't roster. We don't all roster a lot of these players. But what I'm telling you is, this is advice for the general public, where it's like we as a staff, I would be panicking if I was rostering Dawson Knox, which I'm not in any league. I refuse. Just categorically. As I said, I would rather roster Logan Thomas. That's how little I think of this. So, and I saw Mike Manning eye roll me so hard when I said Logan Thomas. But again, I'm not shy about the fact that I don't want or enjoy the work of Mr. Dawson Knox, and I'm willing to go far out of my way to avoid having to deal with it. So, Mike, are you going to try and talk us off the ledge here? Are you going to make an attempt to?
I can. I mean, I'm not going to panic because
don't feel obligated to. I'm just curious if you wanted to.
It's more based on the fact that my expectations were that he was likely to be essentially a touchdown or bust tight end, like most tight ends drafted outside of basically the top like 6 or 7. You were expecting basically either you got a touchdown or you got like 4 or 5 points, because that's what you were expecting. That's just how it is at the position. So are you going to take a high upside guy like Knox at an offense that is one of arguably the best in the offense or in the NFL? And
actually is the best offense in the NFL at this point.
Probably, I think the big thing no, I didn't. He's not going to have 100 yards and 8 or 9 catches and a touchdown probably at all this entire season. But he's on an offense that scores a lot of touchdowns, and the Rams actually do have very good cover players in terms of the linebacker position, both Bobby Wagner, and then back in the secondary when it comes to safeties, they also have guys like Taylor Rapp. They're not slouches by any means. And their defense in general is meant to limit it's supposed to limit most of the deep passes, but obviously Gabriel Davis and
it didn't so much do that, but yeah.
So I think that he's going to have his days. So would you rather have somebody on an offense like the Commanders that has several weapons that are solid weapons as well? Like Curtis Samuel obviously had a good game. Jahan Dotson, and then obviously Terry McLaurin is there. So you're going to just bank on Logan Thomas finding any kind of real consistent usage there, especially since Gibson got some usage as well in the passing game, which he almost never does. Or would you rather have the Knox? Well, I mean, even Gerald Everett, I would still rather Knox over Everett as well.
I would do that. I don't want the Everett, but I'm saying Thomas, specifically to Thomas. Specifically as it relates to Thomas, since that was the unfortunate name that my brain returned in the moment. We will discuss this briefly. Logan Thomas had 6 targets, sir. 6.
Fine. But I'm pretty sure didn't Carson Wentz throw it like 48 times?
That's right. Because what running game are they going to have until Brian Robinson gets back?
I mean, I don't expect a Carson Wentz-led team to throw the ball 48 times. Just wait till they see what Carson Wentz actually plays like in general.
I'm kind of being a solipsistic jerk. If you can't tell, it's kind of what I'm doing here.
He's going to have his Wentzian plays. And
I agree. He should do that thing.
Coach Rivera is going to sit there and be like, if he's mad whenever Antonio Gibson fumbles the ball, he's going to be livid whenever he sees Carson Wentz throw right into a defender's chest.
For the 3rd interception of the day?
Yeah.
Even
Taylor, then he still had 2 interceptions or something.
He did. He had a crazy game. He had a crazy day, and it was a crazy game. I'm just saying, I hear your argument, Mike, and I believe it to be a correct argument, okay? Because you have your expectations properly aligned.
Yeah.
The difference is that, and again, this show is geared for the public, not for 3 people that are experts. Like, what I'm saying is,
thought he was going to break out and be.
A lot of people did, and that's why his rostership percentage is so high. And I'm like, no, you need to not do that. You need to start finding something else, because if you were counting on him week in, week out to be a real performer for you, you're going to be sad. And I think that's why you're so mad. I think that's why people on Twitter are so mad. I think that's what it's about, is they don't have their expectations properly in alignment. So that, for me, is why I'd be like, if I'm in their shoes and I was very married to this and that was going to be my plan at tight end, find a new plan is why I'm saying it's panic. So I just want to state that for the record, because I felt like that might have gotten lost in translation somewhere along the way. Let's do like 2 more quick ones. Never thought we would spend that much time talking about a tight end, or B, Dawson Knox. But another one that I would be willing to panic on, by the way, Dak Prescott. This should be obvious. Looked like garbage.
Yep.
Has to have surgery. Now will miss some games. Will then have to recover and get back up to speed. They say it's minor. As I told my doctor once upon a time, every surgery is minor until it's happening to you.
Yep.
And I don't see how you couldn't be panicking a little bit about Dak. I wouldn't sell low on it. Fortunately, quarterback is deep enough right now that you can probably fake it till you make it. So I wouldn't try to sell out, but I would definitely be panicking a little bit. I'd be, as they say, I'd be quietly crapping myself, because this was likely something that you were kind of counting on at some level. And, well, now you're going to have to find a new plan. And I was also just generally concerned about, I knew it would be ugly with a lot of their better skill position players just beat up and hurt. I don't think I was actually mentally prepared for how ugly it was. And now he's hurt, and he's going to have to rehab and come back and start the whole process over again. I'm just not. I'd be very apprehensive about all of this. I wouldn't sell out for pennies on the dollar, because that's pointless. It's week 1. It's completely pointless. You can find a replacement at this point.
Yeah.
But just like the real Cowboys, at some point you might be looking at trying to make some sort of trade if the rest of your team is good enough and intact. Does anybody want to talk me off the ledge on Dak Prescott?
I mean, how can you not be panicked by you're losing him for what we thought was 4 to 8 weeks, but it looks like it's going to be quicker than that. But
that terrifies me, because that sounds like they're just going to rush him back before he's actually healed.
Yeah, kind of like how Russell Wilson
and
was.
Like and by the way, the Cowboys have never done that. Never sent a player back in when he wasn't fully healed. No.
Just ask Gallup last year, literally.
I was waiting for somebody to. Thank you. That's exactly where I'm going.
Yeah, so I'd be panicked. Hopefully you can find, like you said, quarterback's pretty deep right now. It's week 1, so you can play the streaming option until maybe he comes back, or even after a couple weeks after he comes back and starts to look like the Dak of old. But I'd be panicking and looking to pick up someone on the waivers. Carson Wentz, Justin Fields. It depends on how deep your team is, but you're gonna have to play the streaming game for a few weeks.
Injury aside, I'm not panicked.
Oh no, injury aside, I'm not overly panicked. Mm-hmm. It's largely around the injury to him and also the injuries to his weapons.
It's hard to sit there and pick up you're panicking about a player because he's going to be out for at least several weeks, to say the least. So I'm not that panicked, because he's had these games before. One, Tampa Bay's defense is a really good defense.
It is.
They are healthy now, which they weren't last year in the opener.
Or for most of the season.
Yeah. And the secondary was just riddled with injury. So they were healthy now. Their secondary is arguably one of the deepest this year because of what they dealt with in the past at the position of cornerback and safety. They addressed it in the offseason as well. The offensive line not only was hampered going into it, got more hampered during the game. Was Dak off? Yeah, he was definitely off. But I think there was a stretch last year where Dak, who was, I think, a top 5 in points per game quarterback.
I'd have to pull that number. I don't have that handy.
But either way, he led the league in passing and was in top 3 in passing touchdowns, I believe. So he still had a good year. But there was a stretch last year where he looked horrible.
It was 4 games, about 3/4 of the way through the season. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. I
Because
think he played like Washington and a couple other teams. I know that they
and
it was
he had
highlighted.
he had like a 7 in one game, and people were really mad.
KC was involved
Yeah,
in it.
and he had another game where he had like a 12, and people were talking about benching him, and they were all butthurt about it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So in general, like if I had Dak Prescott, I'm not going to sit there and look to trade for another quarterback by getting rid of a positional player that I'm going to be like, oh well, I'm going to just tank, or like there's no chance of me winning these 8 weeks that Dak is going to miss. No, put him in your IR spot if you have one. He's going to be IR eligible. So just do that. I have him in a league where I said screw it. I'm going to pick up Wentz for now and play literally every matchup every week. Wentz is playing Detroit. That's a good matchup. Go ahead. And then drop him next week. Go for Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I was going to say
so
Matt
on and so
Ryan.
forth.
Yeah.
So that's just the hand you're dealt. You got to deal with it in fantasy. If a player gets hurt, you know what? You got to find a replacement. But for an injury of this sort, that's not that long at a position that is like this, deep and everything, I'm not looking to do anything. I'm just whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do one more. And it's Kadarius Toney. And I'd just like to point out by starting to he played 7 snaps. Oh, stay mad, Twitter. Be mad, stay mad. Like, it's my favorite thing. It's like my number one thing was, we tried to warn you. We all tried to warn you that this was a bad idea and it was a small sample size, and you should not get overly invested in Kadarius Toney, because as electric as he's looked, there's a million warts and there's a million markers that tell you that this might be a bad idea. And here's the thing. There's no actionable advice here. If you have Kadarius Toney, I probably wouldn't cut him, although I have seen a lot of that, including in some leagues I play in where he was cut for all manner of flotsam and gypsum. I saw him cut for Curtis Samuel, and that was one of the more ones that actually made sense. And it was like, at least that made sense. I've seen some other cuts where it was like, oh, geez. How could you not be panicking? He played 7 snaps. And their whole wide receiver.
Doghouse related.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
Is doghouse or playbook related?
And they came out today and they said, no, he knows the playbook. And I'm like, he doesn't.
So he's in his doghouse.
He doesn't know.
This is Ayuk from last year.
He came out and they said they had to come out and specifically state that he knows the playbook. Tells me he doesn't know the playbook. I just that's immediately how I took that. Where it's like, oh, okay, thanks for confirming that he didn't learn the playbook. I get it. He missed the whole offseason. He missed all of camp. He missed everything. So how and Sterling Shepard came back healthier and better looking than I think a lot of people expected. So that's the real thing for me, is like, wait, if Sterling Shepard's ever gone, then you can get excited about Kadarius Toney in a real way. But for right now, and Wan'Dale Robinson got hurt. I just love watching people try and hang their hat on. But when Kadarius Toney was in the game, he looked electric, and I'm like, I'll give you that for those 7 snaps. Yeah. So it's like, if you want to cut Kadarius Toney, I'm fine with it. I was one of the people telling you not to draft him to begin with. So to me, it's like, how could you not be panicking? The problem is, it's like there's ways to deal with a panic moment, and just cutting him for nonsense on the waiver wire doesn't feel like the right approach here. What I would preach with Kadarius Toney is, if my roster could afford it and I had him, I'd probably just stash him on the end of my bench and just not think about it.
And hope he gets traded.
Sure, that'd be great.
That's basically what you're hoping for at this point.
Or in true Giants fashion, people start dropping like flies and he's out there.
Yeah.
In true, I don't want to put that into the universe, but it's every year we talk about this conversation. So it's like, for me, you'd have to be panicking about Kadarius Toney, and it's just, if you're not, I just feel like if you're not paying attention.
Well, what do you guys think the chances are that he is the best receiver for the Giants by the end of the year?
3%.
3%.
You mean most productive?
Most productive, yeah.
Oh, wait. Okay, hang on. That's a good clarification. What do you mean by best?
Just he has the most productive fantasy-wise, so he puts up the most yards or touchdowns, catches.
Even in a point per game basis, I give it a 20.
Yeah, it goes up. For a second, I thought you were talking about could he like become the wide receiver one, like actual franchise player, like 3% for that.
Yeah.
But no, if you're talking about could he finish with the most compiled stats, is effectively that. Yeah, 20, 25.
Okay, so yeah,
people in his way, but nothing
Yeah.
that I'm
I mean,
that afraid of.
So last year, if we're looking at the Ayuk situation in San Fran, where he got demoted to punt returner and saw snaps behind like Trent Sherfield or something like crazy.
Mhm.
So little, you couldn't remember the name.
Yeah, so situations happen like that. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of an NFL locker room or anything along those lines. So maybe he didn't follow some certain rules or things along those lines, and Dable's not happy. If he's not happy, I don't think he has a problem at all with punishing a player and being like, "No, sit on the bench, guy. I got enough depth at this position of mediocrity that I can throw somebody else on the field." So we saw in the second half, though, last year, Ayuk was the most targeted wide receiver on San Fran.
Yeah.
Crazier things have happened.
This is why I was saying if you were that invested, I probably wouldn't have cut him, because it's very little that is out there. Like, would you cut him for Zay Jones?
No.
And me either. It's like Curtis Samuel was the one that I saw that people were talking about that I'm like, okay, maybe.
And he was the number one
might
waiver
do
wire
that.
option for wide receiver in 99% of leagues.
Yeah, it's just there's nothing. It was Curtis Samuel and then nothing. It's like that's the only one I would have entertained, and then the rest of it's like, no, I'm not doing that.
I'm sure you
would
have
you have cut him
somebody
for
on your
Sterling
bench.
Shepard? Would you have cut him for Sterling Shepard?
It's
close,
yeah,
right?
because
That's a weird
So
one.
the only reason I would do that is because Daniel Jones just loves Sterling Shepard.
I know, it's
He
a weird
he
one,
is
right?
Obsessed with him.
I know. I swear they're like best friends.
I think
nuts.
90% of the games that Sterling Shepard has played and finished the game with Daniel Jones under center, he has double-digit targets.
Yeah, he's been his favorite target forever. Like, it's also.
I didn't think. I mean, the Achilles thing. Like, I didn't think he had any chance of coming back at his age this quickly and look fine.
That good. Look that explosive out of the break, because he was good out of his cuts. Like, he didn't look. If I didn't know that he had ruptured his Achilles,
I wouldn't have guessed.
I couldn't have told you. I couldn't have told you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even
like
questioned it.
He had like an ankle injury or something like that was one of those couple weeks out type injuries.
Yeah.
If anything.
I
mean,
wouldn't
apparently everybody except for Cam Akers can come and return from an Achilles injury and not have any problems whatsoever.
We don't need to be any more mean to Cam Akers than everybody else on Twitter already was. It's such a nasty scenario.
I have Cam Akers in one league that's a keeper league. That it's like I picked him up last year and threw him into my IR spot and just like left it like, he's probably going to be a starter for the Rams next year, and I'll have him for a 12th round pick. So I didn't draft him anywhere.
Yeah.
But as a keeper at that price, I was like, why not give it a shot? Let's
Sure.
see what it does.
Sure.
And then just I see why I didn't draft anything for him, because he didn't look good in the postseason last year, but also this offensive line is junk. So I think that Akers will pick it up, though. That's for sure. I think that he will have command more of the offense.
Well, we've got Akers on here, so we can do that real quick.
That's
for me, it's like
a nice transition with the Achilles.
Sure, and we can do that one, and I was actually going to wrap the show, but I guess we'll do that as a bonus. We'll do a bonus.
Sure.
With Cam Akers, you're too invested in it to do anything with it.
Guaranteed.
You can't cut him. You can't. This is why I wasn't even going to put him on the show sheet, because there's no advice here other than this from me.
There's some that are buying it low, some are trying to sell it, but like
you're just stuck. You're stuck. You're not going to get a proper deal done here. It's going to be very, very hard. Unless you can find that magical person that is going, and you roster Cam Akers, and somebody is willing to give you what you put in, then there's no point in this conversation. And by the way, I don't think that person exists. I don't know who in the world that you're going to be dealing with is going to say, I'll give you preseason, ROI for Cam Akers. I just don't think it's going to happen. You might be able to find somebody to help you out, but I don't. And you can't cut him. And I wouldn't sell low. I would stick him on the end of my bench. I would stick him on the end of my bench and see what happens. Because I could sell low in 3 or 4 weeks, Mike.
Yeah, but I think the big thing is with Cam Akers now is you can, like, he was injured the entire week. And there was skepticism about him even playing in general. And it was a different injury. It wasn't the Achilles that was saying it. It was like a hamstring or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're sitting there looking at that and saying, well, he was hurt the whole week, so he obviously wasn't going to play a full workload. They put him out there a couple snaps, and he had Antonio Gibson syndrome, where he did everything that you don't want to, like the things that keep you on the field, he did wrong.
Yeah, he did all the things that you would need to do properly. He did them all bad.
But 110% of his yardage came after contact, and that's with 0 yards. So he was in the backfield, touched the ball in the backfield, and then had to fight to get to the line of scrimmage.
Let me put this a different way. Let me ask you this question: are you in a position where you're just done and you'll take 66 cents on the dollar?
Right. That's the question.
That's the question. I'm asking you that directly.
I know.
Are you done, and would you take 66 cents on the dollar? Because that's what I think is your best case scenario. Or would you rather just go down with the ship? Because I'm much more historically of the I'll go down with the ship rather than get my 66 cents on the dollar in week 1. Because I'll kill myself if we get to week 5.
And suddenly got the starting bat.
And suddenly everything has been corrected and it's fine. I'll never be able to look myself in the mirror. I know who I am and how I operate. I'll never forgive myself. So, but I'm not most people. There's a lot of people that would look at this differently. So that becomes the question. And Mike, you write the trade content. What do you think?
No, I wouldn't sell him low, to be honest. I'd stick with it. Just like you said, I would hate it if week 5 and he's, the starting running back and he's lighting up, football fields. And so I'm going to hold on to him. And I think maybe, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but maybe it's slightly more encouraging that we don't think, at least it's his Achilles that's keeping him off the field. It's more of, hey, you need to start doing the little things correctly. And if you want to get playing time, and maybe
I think that actually might be worse, because if it was Achilles, you'd have something nice and easy to point at.
Yeah,
and you'd have a little more to work with. That's a little more tangible. There are timelines that you can use for an Achilles injuries that are broadly accepted. There's no timeline that I could give you for being in the doghouse of Sean McVay.
That's true, but with an Achilles injury, we're still just over a year, 14 months out from his Achilles injury. So the timeline it's usually much longer than 14 months, right? It's a year and a half, 2 years, even if you even come back. I guess this season's going to prove a lot with Robinson and Sterling Shepard. We're going to kind of find out with Achilles injuries, but I don't know. To me, just the fact that maybe the injury is not a problem, he can kind of get his stuff together and, do the little things right, and he can start seeing.
I don't believe the injury is not a factor. I saw him trying to get off the brakes and into his cuts, and I'm like, that doesn't.
You think it's a mental thing, or
no? It didn't look like somebody whose leg was all the way healthy. Yeah. I think it's a couple things. I think his leg is not totally right. I think he's trying to push himself because he's under pressure to do so, and I think that is now causing the mental mistakes. I think it's all of those things. I think you're hurt. You're trying to play through it, and you're trying too hard, and now. Nothing's easy. Mm-hmm. It's how you can develop anybody who's played golf can understand this. You can put yourself in that scenario where one thing goes wrong and now you're trying so hard to overcompensate with everything else that now nothing works anymore and you've effectively given yourself the yips. I feel like that's what I'm watching. But what do you do with that? That's why I didn't want to go all the way into this conversation, because you're really functionally talking about a decision between after one game. I have to I'm making the decision of, am I willing to ride this out and see what I can and see where it ends up in the next couple of weeks, or am I done now and I'm willing to take, let's call it 75 cents on the dollar to get something. It's a hard question because I would need to know what something is
that's
in
the
a
big
very
thing.
real way.
Yeah.
And the second part of that conversation would be, and also Mike, just from years gone by, Mike Burland, from years gone by, I also was a big advocate of, I don't normally make trades until week 4.
Okay.
You don't know anything.
Yeah.
You don't have enough sample to actually, I didn't even used to start writing trade columns until week 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't believe in it. I don't believe it typically in making trades that early out of the gate, because I've seen it backfire way too many times where it starts off really bad and then things get corrected and then suddenly everything's fine, but you've already sold out and now you hate yourself forever. And I know what I will accept in my own head and in my own life, and I cannot live in that reality. I'll drive myself insane with that for the remainder of time. So that's why it's like that one to me is a really hard one, because I can only tell you for me, my own personal opinion, I would just stash him on the end of my bench. I wouldn't put him anywhere near my starting lineup for the next couple of weeks, because I could always just sell low for 50 cents on the dollar in week 5 if I was truly done with it. And all I'm losing out is that 0.25 of whatever that it wasn't. It's probably not going to be a make or break level thing for my team anyway.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. So that's why I'm curious from you two. Are you going to push the panic button and take your 75 cents on the dollar or whatever it winds up being just to be done with the headache?
I think the potential of what he could be is greater than what you're going to get if you trade him now after week 1. So I'm going to hold on to him at least for a couple more weeks. Like you said, week 4, week 5. And if I have to kind of cut bait then so be it. But I think that potential of what he could be, I think it's too large to just give away for nothing. And it's like you said, it's hard to know what the something is. It's a lot easier if you put in a player and who it is you're getting, then we can kind of make that decision. But if you're telling me I'm going to sell him 75 cents or 50 cents to the dollar, and no, I'm holding on to him.
Well, how about I sit there and name like 2 or 3 players and see what you think?
We can do that. We'll do that. We'll do a modified name game.
Elijah Moore.
I gotta wait like several weeks.
No, I'm gonna say no.
I'm gonna say no to that too. Although there is a scenario where I would do it if I had.
Because these are guys who are drafted like 8th to 10th round.
Yeah, no, I know what you're doing.
Than essentially what would be considered like a 75%.
Yeah, I know what you're doing. I know that one. That one's is a tough one because of the injury.
Alan Lazard.
No.
Ramondre Stevenson.
No.
No, but I could see it being a yes after this week. So,
I could see certain people having a different answer, but for me, I'm going to say that's a no.
Yeah.
I'm do it for Stevenson.
Yeah.
Stevenson's getting close. You're in the neighborhood at least.
Yeah. I'm like convincing myself now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't laugh at you. I wouldn't laugh at you for that. Like that would make that like I wouldn't be a dick. Like that it's a legit trade.
Like I think the best player would be like Kareem Hunt.
I would do. That I would do. That I would 100% do. If I could get Kareem Hunt for Cam Akers right now, I would take that trade and I would run away.
If you waited even one more week, then this drops below probably even Elijah Moore or Alan Lazard is what I just don't
believe. That's my point. I just don't believe. I bet you could get the Lazard deal done, and the Mitchell thing maybe, depending on because they might be desperate at running back. In this scenario, you have depth, so that might work. And if in that exact specific scenario where I have depth and I can afford to wait out the injury, then I could possibly be talked into that. The Kareem Hunt one I would do because you could. First of all, I think Kareem Hunt is being underrated anyway, so that's one.
My feelings there too.
I know you and I are in alignment on that particular topic. And you were correct. He scored twice. Like as soon as the game started, he scored. And I immediately thought of you. I'm like, somewhere Mike Manning is smiling. It's like, so it's like he, and then I saw him score again, and I'm like, now Mike's fist pumping. Like,
it made up for Njoku.
It did make up for Njoku a little bit, but that was the one where I was like, no, I will take Kareem Hunt. Like if I could get that done, I'll do that right now. Like and never look back.
I would take the safety I would take the safeness of Ramondre Stevenson over the iffiness of Cam Akers right now.
Yeah,
I don't even think that
agree
you
with
would.
that.
I don't think somebody would offer you. I don't think if you offered that to somebody, I don't think they'll take that. You would have to-
That's the other thing. That's the other part
It
of
would
that,
it
right?
would be finding somebody that had the optimism, like was a fan of him in the beginning,
Thank you, Ray.
before the draft and everything. That's what you'd have to look for. Somebody that was a fan of him that you knew in your league before the draft, and be like, you know what? Here he is.
Yeah.
If you, I'll do it for this guy on your team.
What are you playing in leagues with Jack Kavanaugh? I mean, I am, but he already has all the Akers shares, so it's like that's why this is such a hard one, and it's why I find this conversation in particular to be one of the more difficult, because it's like
That's what we're here for, though.
it is. It's why we beat. It's why we go around the mulberry bush. And Mr. Burland, you added Devonta Smith on here, and with the note, I don't know whether to panic or be patient.
Yes.
First of all,
I mean, it's not good.
Go ahead.
It's not good, man. It's not good. You should be panicking.
It wasn't going to be good.
This was never going to work. Okay.
No.
I was saying this to anyone who would listen all preseason. The one you want is AJ Brown.
Oh yeah.
And the other one you want is
100%.
Dallas Goedert. And then I don't want anything else.
Yeah.
I want those two things and Hurts. And that's it. The rest of that team, no. I don't want Miles Sanders. I was iffy on Gainwell because he's going to have to play in a three-headed monster. Boston Scott is free on the waiver wire. That's actually somewhat interesting when we get into the buys and when somebody inevitably gets hurt. Sure, like that but it's so slim pickings that I saw that note and I was like, oh no, dude, no. No, you don't want Devonta Smith. If you can get Devonta Smith off your team for anything that makes sense, you should do that right now.
Yeah.
Luckily,
Yeah.
They're not going to throw enough passes, and the passes they do throw are not going to be accurate enough. And you're talking to a guy that loves Jalen Hurts, rosters him in 3 leagues, and also like goes out of his way to acquire him. I had him as my QB4 in the preseason because of the rushing floor. I love Jalen Hurts. He can't ever support 2 wide receivers. He can barely support 2 pass catchers.
Yeah.
And for me, that's Brown and Goddard.
Yeah, and the only reason you can consider Goddard like supported is because of what position he's at. Yeah. Like if he was actually a wide receiver, it wouldn't be supporting it.
It wouldn't be good. No, it wouldn't be good. So no, I do not want Devonta Smith. I've been very open about this. I had him buried in my rankings.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not a comment on like Devonta Smith is bad at football, by the way.
Yeah,
I actually don't think Devonta Smith is bad at football.
That's the hard part. It's
like
you look at him and say, I think he's a good receiver, but yeah.
I think if he was playing on a different team with a different quarterback and a different system, we could have this Devonta Smith conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want Devonta Smith. And the problem is that it's going to be really hard to trade Devonta Smith. This is the other reason I didn't want him, is because I like guys. I usually try to target guys with a certain level of motility, meaning they're fluid enough that they're desirable enough that other teams will want them. Mm-hmm. And it's not just my own pet guys. So I like guys like that typically that I try to target. And Devonta Smith is the one that I'm like, unless you play in a league with like a Devonta Smith person, it's going to be really hard because if he has like a 2 and a 2 and a 2 3 weeks in a row, most casual people you play with are going to look at that and be like, who is this clown that I don't even remember, even though he was a big deal at one point. Like it's how quickly people forget.
Yeah.
And it to me, terrifying rostering Devonta Smith. So I will say I have 0 Devonta Smith shares in any league. Just couldn't do it. Couldn't bring myself to do it. So it sounds like Mike, it sounds like Mike, you and I are pretty much in alignment on that. I don't want to speak for you because I may have gone too far past what you would co-sign, but
I mean, I do agree. Like I have 0 Devonta Smith shares. I said whenever AJ Brown got there, that just completely killed any value that Devonta Smith has.
It's true. I was there. I was on the show.
Yeah.
I remember you doing it.
But I would probably say about waiting a week to do like look around, certainly, because I don't think his value would drop as much as like Cam Akers, as we were saying. Like if Cam Akers continues on the same path, his value is plummeting like a boulder down.
That has to do with the opportunity cost because of what you had to pay. Whereas Devonta Smith was like what, a 9th round pick?
And He's still a
So-
first round, and as we said, he's still a first round player, second year. That a lot of people, I'm pretty sure nobody thinks he's a bad player by any means. So they're also going against the Minnesota Vikings, which were one of the worst secondaries in the entire league last year. They were burned multiple times last week by the Packers wide receivers. It's just that they didn't hold on to the ball or squeeze the ball. It's a catch. So I think that there is a decent chance that Devontae Smith has a rebound-ish to at least have a glimmer of hope for any Devontae Smith owners, and then I will let you do what you will want with it. But I would probably look to sell high.
Yeah, it's tough. I actually don't even have any Devontae Smith shares myself, but it was just one of those. You see the score, and then you look at the box score, and you're like, no catches, and that shootout. So, yeah, I totally agree about AJ Brown. He just fits Jalen Hurts and his skill set much better, and hopefully Devontae Smith can maybe get to another team, or maybe like Mike said, have a blow up week in week 2, and
yeah, and then hopefully you can flip that off
because that's what I'm looking to do if I was a Devontae Smith owner.
You're hoping for the big blow up, and then it's like, great, go, get out of here, get out of here, get out of here. Like, but that's one that I was like that. We used to do a skull and crossbones list once upon a time, like the do not draft list. We don't do that anymore because it's kind of outdated. But I can tell you, if we were still doing that, he would have been on mine. And and the definition of that has changed. It used to be players you would not roster under any circumstances was the literal definition of it.
Yeah.
Over time, realistically speaking, any player could be rosterable. You know what I mean? Just given what the investment would be to within a certain tolerance. If they would be high enough profile to even make such said list. But Devonta Smith would have been about as close to my skull and crossbones list as it would have been possible to do. Where it's like, no. Like I'm not coming anywhere near this. So with that, I think, we had a couple other names here, but to be honest with you, let's save those because there's not enough sample size for the 3 players that I'm talking about here. Let's save those, and we'll touch on those in a couple weeks, or probably next week even, when we've got a little bit more data to work with. I don't want to have another 40-minute Cam Akers sell at 75 cents on the dollar conversation. So with that, let's go through and do some socials. Mike Burland, where can the people find you?
Yeah, just at Michael Burland. That's Burland, and that's where you can find me. And of course, Important Nonsense, writing trade articles.
Check those out. They're fantastic. And Mike Manning, where can the people find you?
Yeah, on Twitter, as you can see below me, just at _Mike_Manning, because somebody already had Mike Manning, so that didn't work. It's a very common name.
That someone would have Mike Manning.
But yeah, every Friday, there will be a wide receiver cornerback matchup article on Important Nonsense. Did pretty well last week. It's going to continue to do well. So, just keep an eye out for it for DFS and season-long purpose.
Fabulous. And as always, I'm Neil Smith at @nonsense_Neil. You can find me on Twitter, and you can find me here every Wednesday doing this. And check us out, obviously, on Patreon, patreon.com/important nonsense, and hit us up on Discord. So even for $1, that gets you into the Discord. Feel free to sign up even for the $1, and you can come in and just pepper us with questions. We literally have nothing better to do. So if you want to come on and just bother us with all your roster questions or pick our brain about anything we've talked about here or on any subsequent shows, we are all there for you. Same with that FF Nerd, at McDonald Jordan, at Jack Kavanaugh, and Steve Bonham will be back in the normal chair next week. All right, everybody. Well, thanks again for tuning in. And until next week, keep up the nonsense.